Shabbat Shalom. I'm always surprised by how many people tell me that they don't own a Bible. We have many impassioned debates in Judaism about practically every subject under the sun. We even have debates about what are the key Jewish books that every Jewish household should have. But there is no debate that the Bible should be at the center of every Jewish bookshelf. Every Jewish home should have Jewish books, and every Jewish bookshelf should include the Bible. There is unanimity about this in Judaism. When people tell me that they don't own a Bible, or they don't know whether they own a Bible or not, it suggests to me that they're not paying enough attention to their Jewish learning. And if they are not paying enough attention to their Jewish learning, chances are they are not paying enough attention to their Jewish identity. And if they are not paying enough attention to their Jewish identity, chances are that their children are not getting enough Jewish identity. And if their children are not getting enough Jewish identity, chances are that these children themselves will not raise Jewish children. They simply won't care one way or the other. Often parents will say something about Jewish education that is contrary to everything we know and they believe about Jewish education. They say to me, when our children grow up, they'll make up their own minds. Where do we allow this to happen in child rearing? Would we be prepared to say that when our children grow up, they will decide whether they'll have a measles booster or not? But in the meantime, let the 6-year-old decide for herself whether she wants the shot or not? Would we be prepared to say that when our children grow up, they will decide whether they want to learn mathematics or not? Let the 10-year-old decide for himself whether he wants to study math. Would we be prepared to say that when our children grow up, they will decide whether to know enough English to read a novel? But in the meantime, let the 12-year-old decide for herself whether she wants to take the reading class? Would we be prepared to say that when our children grow up, they will decide whether to treat each other kindly, but in the meantime, let the 15-year-old decide for himself whether he wants to bully his classmates on the playing field? So if we are not prepared to allow these decisions to rest in the hands of our children, why do so many so happily leave the most monumental decision of all to their children, whether they will have a Jewish identity? Could it be that we do not consider this to be a monumental decision? We're blessed with hundreds of children here in our synagogue, and I have observed hundreds of parents who work hard to instill in their children values that they consider to be monumental, important to them. Believe you me, when parents feel strongly about something, they let their children know. The one thing you don't want to mess with is a New York City mother of a toddler who feels strongly about whether her child is receiving enough instruction in our nursery school. The other thing you don't want to mess with is a New York City father of a teenager who feels strongly that his son was wrongly left off the baseball team. So why do we lose our parental minds when it comes to Judaism? When from amongst all Americans, we are perhaps the most insistent on study and education and discipline on all other matters. Children will never have a good education if their parents don't insist on it from an early age. And children will never have a good Jewish education if their parents don't insist on it from an early age. And children will never have a Jewish identity if parents don't work to give it to them. To leave that decision to the child is to put that child at risk and to condemn that child to possible Jewlessness. Like any other educational endeavor that seeks to impart knowledge or values, or both, it requires parents to decide what their children study, what values they want their children to have, and to teach them in words and in deeds, textbooks and actions, what they want them to know. Often, the best lesson is not to read a textbook that we should be respectful of others. It is far more powerful if our children see their parents treating another kindly. Often the best lesson is not to read a textbook about Hanukkah, but for children to see their parents observing Hanukkah in the home. It goes without saying that Judaism is based upon one generation teaching the next generation. In our Torah portion for the week, Parshat Bo, in the book of Exodus, we read of the infliction of the final plagues on Egypt. Before the last plague, the death of the firstborn, Moses instructed the people to slaughter a lamb as a Passover offering and to take the blood of the lamb, remember, and do what with it? Spread it over the doorposts of their homes so that their homes would be spared the plague. The Bible then tells us this: when you come to the land that God will give you, you shall observe this service of sacrificing a paschal lamb. And when your children say to you, "What is this service?" you shall say to them, "It is the Passover sacrifice to God because he passed over our house when the Egyptians were struck." This passage, by the way, forms the later passage in the Haggadah about the 4 children who ask the questions. The Jewish way is the way of children asking and parents responding. It is the constant cycle of asking and answering. Judaism doesn't work if the cycle is halted. Judaism doesn't work if the children don't ask. Judaism doesn't work if the parents don't answer. Nowhere in Jewish tradition, not in the Bible, not in the Passover Haggadah, not anywhere do we confront a situation where the children ask and the parents don't know enough to answer. Remember, children won't ask in the first place if they are not placed in Jewish situations that stimulate their Jewish attention and interest. There's a fascinating midrash about this passage in the Torah portion. The midrash says, at that very moment, when the Bible states that the children of the future will ask about this ritual, at that very moment, says the midrash, bad news was brought to the Israelites that the Torah would be forgotten. But others say, says the midrash, at that very moment, good news was brought to them, that they would have children, and that their children would have children. It's a profound statement by our sages. There is good news and bad news about the preservation of Jewish values, tradition, and civilization. The good news is that we will continue to have children. A generation will follow us, and a generation will follow them. They will be tasked with the continuity of everything that we hold dear. We have a good chance of preserving, maintaining, perpetuating, and improving the tradition and Jewish civilization. The bad news is that it is our human nature to forget what happened before us. If we do not constantly remind each and every generation, they will forget. It is the way of the world. Only the Jews survived antiquity. Of all of the nations that we read about in the Bible and of all of the powerful empires of ancient days that we studied about in school, Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, Greece, Rome. Only we survived. It has baffled commentators for centuries. As Mark Twain wrote, what is the secret of Jewish immortality? The real secret of Jewish survival is what the Midrash teaches. Every generation of Jews taught Judaism to their posterity. Every generation of parents reminded their children of events long ago. Every generation of children was stimulated to ask questions about Judaism. Every generation of parents knew how to answer them. Every new generation must contain within it all of the Jews of the past. Every generation must feel as if they were personally redeemed from Egypt, that they were there at the first Passover, and that they too took the oath to explain Judaism to their posterity. They must feel that living within us is not only our generation, but the whole of our history from Egypt until now. It's not only, as is common today, do as your inner voice tells you, but also know the voice of the tradition. This tradition must affect the whole of who we are. It should affect our behavior, our morals, our principles, and our posterity. The bad news? No generation of Jews has been more shut off of Jewish tradition than our own. No generation of Jews has been less capable of passing Judaism on to the next generation. No generation of Jews has forgotten more of what came before. The good news? We will be blessed with children. And our children will have children. We still have a chance, a good chance, to keep the cycle alive, because there is always hope in Jewish children. Keep the cycle alive. Keep the Jewish way. If you don't have a Bible at home, get one. Today. Actually, not today. Wait till Shabbat is over. And once you have a Bible, read it. And let your children watch you read it. In our Torah portion, when Moses confronts Pharaoh demanding that the people be freed, Pharaoh asked him, where is everyone going? And who are the ones to go? And Moses replied, we're going out into the desert. All of us will go. With our young and with our old, we will go with our sons and our daughters. May this be our generation's motto as well. All of us will go into the Jewish future. We will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters on this remarkable journey of the Jewish people. The most fascinating adventure in the history of the world.